Dan Mullen has Florida back on track to be a contender in the SEC, not just in the SEC East, but in the SEC in general. He's recruited good talent to come in to get Florida back where they want to be, and this year is no different. Even when they lose a ton of key pieces, this is still a talented team that can make a run. They're still obviously going to compete with Georgia for the SEC East, and then if something happens from there, they were able to get the SEC championship last year, and they're more than capable of getting back there again. Obviously, they have to worry about Georgia, like I said. That's always going to be a concern for them, but this is a team that has the talent to be able to get back where they're trying to go. At number 10, we have wide receiver Jacob Copeland. So Florida loses a lot at wide receiver with Kadarius Toney gone, with Trayvon Grimes gone, and guys like Copeland showed potential last year. He had 18.9 yards per catch. So there's a lot of people who think that he can be a good wide receiver, a good option for the quarterback, which we'll talk about in just a little bit here. Number 9, defensive end Chris Bogle. So Florida's defensive line is going to be one of the best in college football. There's a ton of talent, and they have a lot of depth, which is exciting. Florida is a team that can be disruptive on the defensive line, and guys like Bogle, who, he kind of played a little bit of role in the Netflix show QB1, at least early on. He did get hurt right away, but it's nice to see that he's doing well with Florida too. Now he does have a lot of competition, which will hopefully elevate his play, but it also means that he can't have any slip ups because there's going to be guys behind him that are ready to go. Number 8, defensive tackle Antonio Shelton. So as if they didn't have enough talent on the defensive line, they add the Penn State transfer who has 12 and a half tackles for loss and 6 sacks in his career. Shelton's a guy that can be disruptive, very powerful player, and he'll be a good fit in this defense. Number 7, the guy that everybody's going to pay attention to, quarterback Emery Jones. Didn't play a ton last year, but was a feature of the offense every once in a while when they took Kyle Trask out. So he has some experience. A lot of people are hyping him up. I'm not sold on him yet. I think we have to see something from him as a passer at least. He's more used in running situations. But I do think he's more of what Dan Mullen likes to do when you look at, not comparing him to Dak Prescott, but similar to how they use Dak. And he does have a good arm. It's just, can he be accurate and show that he can be efficient throwing the football. Number 6, Mohamud Bate. Last year had 67 tackles, 7 tackles for loss. This defense, even though they lost a lot of key pieces, well, not a lot, I should say, like in the secondary, and then they lose more on offense, but there's still a ton of talent returning, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And he's not even the best linebacker on this team. We'll talk about that guy in just a sec. I mentioned that the secondary loses some guys, but they also get back guys like Trey Dean. Now, for those who remember, Dean was the guy who had a pick in the SEC championship game and then got laid out by John Mechie. But at one point in 2019, he was considered one of the best defensive backs in the country. He was having a great year. I don't know what happened, but he has the ability to be a difference maker. And I think that now that there's less competition for his spot, he'll be able to get back to that form and show what he can do. Number 4, linebacker Ventral Miller, a guy who's really improved over the last couple years. A former 3-star who is not typically the 4 or 5 stars that Florida goes after, but a guy who is, like I said, improving every single year, getting better, and he's a playmaker. He had 86 tackles last year, 7.5 for loss and 3.5 sacks. He's fun to watch. He doesn't make any like super crazy plays, but he makes the right plays. And if you appreciate football for what it is, guys like Miller will give you those plays that you can rely on. And he's going to be a leader of this defense, and it's going to be a defense that has experience outside of the back end, but there's still a ton of guys that will be able to help them step up, especially with an offense that's going to be trying to figure things out, at least at quarterback and wide receiver. Number 3, defensive tackle Zachary Carter. So Carter and Shelton give Florida maybe the best duo at defensive tackle in the country. You can make the argument that they're up there at least. Maybe not the best, but they're definitely up in the top 10 for sure. Carter's a guy that made a lot of plays for Florida last year. He had 9 tackles for loss and 5 sacks. Doing that up the middle is impressive. I don't think that people realize working in the trenches usually means that your production isn't going to be as high as someone who works on the edge. And speaking of the edge, former Georgia transfer defensive end Brenton Cox had 42 tackles with 10 tackles for loss last year, really thriving in his new role on his rival team from Georgia. So, like I said, as you can see, there's 4 options, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, you could say. There's a lot of guys behind all 4 of these guys on the defensive line, and it's going to be exciting to see what this defense can do. And then number 1, Kairi Elam. I don't think there's any debate about if he's the best player on this team or on the defense for sure. There's a lot of talent on the defense, like I said, and Elam's a guy that had, people were on him since he set foot on campus, I should say. And he's a talented player, a long, rangy player that can make some plays, and really stepped into his own role, I guess, last year. 2 years ago, there was competition for his spot. He was still learning, and last year he really commanded that spot, and that resulted in first team All-SEC. Teams did try to test him quite a bit last year. He had 11 passes defended. I don't think they test him as much this year. I still think they're going to try, but I think with a new guy on the other corner spot, they're going to try testing that side a little bit more than they are Elam's side. They know what Elam can do. He has a future in the NFL, so teams are going to be a little bit more hesitant to throw the ball that way. Florida, as you can see, is a very talented team. There's no doubt about that. Can they beat Georgia and get back to the SEC championship? That remains the biggest question, but it's definitely a question that is answerable. We can see that there's potential for them to get back where they want to be. They're headed in the right direction, and if Emery Jones takes a step in his development as a passer, this is going to be a terrifying team this year.